In Oxfordshire, we're taking a particular approach and bringing a highlight to neglect. What happens in neglect is that children are lost sight of. And that could be not being held in mind by a parent for a whole host of reasons, which could be domestic abuse or alcohol or mental health issues. But it means that child isn't the centre of that parent's world. Our role is to bring a light onto that child, what they're experiencing. Oxfordshire is very familiar with child sexual exploitation, and one of the key factors for those children was sitting underneath was neglect. And so we all have a responsibility to really get a deeper understanding of what neglect does to children. It is corrosive, is a word I often use with people, because what it does is for that child means that they don't matter. And they don't matter in terms of school attendance, they don't necessarily matter in terms of their home environment, and they're not attended to in terms of their emotional world. Our role is to bring that child to life for those parents and carers again.
It's really important that we identify neglect as early as possible. I like that with any concern. The earlier we recognise and identify that concern, the easier it is to do something about it. And with neglect, it's really important we name it. If we've got neglect concerns, we need to say that they're neglect concerns. And I think sometimes the fear of doing that is fear about the response from an adult. And actually, we need to be focused on the children. And the sooner that we name and identify neglect, the easier it is, and the sooner we can do something about it. The difficulty, I think, around neglect is that so much of it is based on personal view. What's your messy is different to what's my messy. And that's why we now have lots of tools and ways to support us with both understanding, identifying and measuring the neglect, and obviously, really importantly, the impact of that neglect. And that's especially where we would use the 3 houses tool. That's the opportunity for us to hear directly from that child. What's it like to be you? What's it like to live in your house? And that's where we're gaining that evidence of what is the impact of these concerns on that child. Another way to find neglect is actually to really literally go looking for it. And if you are, as a professional, out on a home visit, how are you going to find neglect? You know, make sure you look around. What's in their kitchen? You know, what's in their fridge? What are the children's bedrooms like? And although that might not feel like that's always your role, there are ways to do that are not so obvious. Offer to make a cup of tea. That's an easy way to have a look in somebody's fridge. Do they have any food? You know, and if so, what does that look like? What about the children's bedrooms? Have they got bedding?
As health visitors, we have an important role in looking at areas of neglect so that we're able to support families, to ensure that we're providing them with knowledge, looking at developmental stages for children, ensuring that parents have the correct information about providing good oral health, good nutrition, safety for their families, and ensuring that they have met all the required elements for protecting their children as time goes on, such as immunisations. Do parents know not to give a bottle with juice in, or let the baby fall asleep at night time drinking from a bottle? Do they know about ensuring that they brush teeth as soon as they come through? Are we talking about them providing a safe environment for their family, free from obstructions, free from paraphernalia in the household, be that drug paraphernalia or bottles that are left under the sink that haven't been stored away in a locked cupboard? It could be something simple like encouraging them to have a calendar to put their appointments on.
So the term after a child turns 3, they're entitled to 15 hours of free nursery education, and some children will actually have been entitled to 15 hours from their 2nd birthday. And as providers, we are bound by the statutory framework for the early years foundation stage and the Ofsted framework to keep really careful records about children's attendance. And we also need to make sure that we're giving really positive messages to parents and carers about why coming to nursery is just so important. It's really important for their social and emotional well-being, and also for their learning and development. As well as that, we're also setting children up and setting families up to develop really good habits about attendance as they move into reception and into statutory school.
My role is to support young people that are 16 plus, not in education, employment or training. The majority of my young people, there's been a history of disruptive education for that young person. That could be through non-attendance, poor attendance, exclusion, elected home education, special educational needs not being followed up. So very much a disruption and not being able to sustain education. For me, those young people I'm supporting have limited or no qualifications, poor basic literacy and numeracy skills. But for me, it's more than just education for those young people now. The lack of education for that young person has also had an impact on their boundaries, their routines, and being able to engage in the local community. And a lot of my early work with those young people is to get them out in the community, is to actually build their confidence and get them back into the community and back into something positive. The impact of financial neglect on the child is they feel guilty, lack confidence, lack self-worth because they're unable to help the situation that is happening at home. Debt can cause financial arguments. Parents feel unable to protect their children and also able to meet the basic needs as well of their child. Financial debt can also create isolation and social exclusion within the community. For instance, children not being able to access activities at their local school. It has a real impact on the child's emotional and mental health. And it's important that we ensure all families are claiming their correct entitlements and also aware of all the local agencies in the area that can help, in particular around budgeting.
Research evidence indicates that disabled children are more at risk of abuse and neglect than their peers. Yet they are less likely to be subject to child protection plans, and we just need to know a little bit more about what that's about, and practitioners need to be mindful of some of the additional issues and challenges for disabled children. Developmental delay or behaviour which challenges may not necessarily be attributable to a child's disability or condition, and it's really important to just think about to unpick that and think about what that may be due to neglect and poor parenting. For disabled children, neglect may be even more life-threatening. For instance, a child not receiving prompt medical treatment could die. A child having a prolonged seizure, for instance. Disabled children are entitled to the same care, the same relationship of care, the same standard of parenting as any other child. Parents doing their best may not be enough. They have the same social, emotional and cognitive needs as other children. But parents may be absolutely overwhelmed by the practical care that is needed, and so those social, emotional, cognitive needs are neglected and they don't develop in the same, to their potential. Disabled children may communicate in different ways. They may not communicate verbally, but we need to sort of get underneath that and really think about what this child is communicating, because their distressed behaviour may be communicating that they don't feel safe at home. Parents of disabled children actually might experience financial and practical difficulties. So we need to balance neglect due to systemic issues and parenting capacity. It may be one or the other, or a combination, and our assessments of parenting capacity need to bear that in mind. We might find that one agency has a bit of information that another agency doesn't have, and we know again from serious case reviews that if you don't join up that information, then you don't get a full picture, and that's a real risk for disabled children. We need to listen to the views and experience of disabled children. We need to know what it's like for them to live in that family or in that placement, and safeguarding concerns not be kind of hidden underneath the family's needs, because we may see the family's needs as huge, but actually that the views of the disabled child in the midst of that are so vital and important.
If we're going to work with neglect, a multi-agency assessment is a really important kind of starting point. An example of that is the early help assessment. I guess what we recognise is neglect is the presentation, but what we need to do is understand what's causing that, and until we know that, we're really kind of going to be playing at guesswork in terms of how do we actually address these issues and how is this family going to move forward. it would be really important that our assessment includes the voice of all the family members, all the children, parents, and also the professionals that are working with this family, because actually not everybody will see these concerns played out in the same way. And with neglect, it's really important we consider that actually the impact may be very different on all of the different children within that household. So it's really important that everybody is considered as an individual to form that whole multi-agency assessment. When we've got our assessment, that will then lead us nicely into our multi-agency plan. That may be in a team around the family, child in need, or child protection. And that plan should really identify our concerns and be really specific and clear with our actions that are needed from professionals to the family members to address the concerns. It will also provide us the opportunity to build on any strengths that the family have. And it's really important that those actions are clear and that they're timely. So all the time we are kind of hoping to see this family move forward. What's really important is that we then monitor and review, hopefully progress or lack of progress. We can't afford for drift.
What we're asking everyone to do is ensure that they use the neglect tool when they're discussing with families how to progress and how to monitor what is happening to their children. You can use it with the parents right from the beginning and actually pinpoint with them where your concerns are, because if they can see where your concerns are, they may actually then be alerted to the fact that they need to move forward and do things differently. You may need to then think about who you're going to share that information with. That way then we're ensuring we're all following the same tool, using the same information, the same language. And without talking about that, we're not going to know what other people's concerns are. But you want to be open and honest and transparent with the families, so you're not hiding anything, but also so that they know you're there to support them. That way then you can revisit the tool again in 3 months, in 6 months, and actually show the families that they've made progression and that things have moved forward for them.
Where you've got children who are on roll but maybe they're not attending quite as regularly as you would like them to do, or you've got unexplained absences where parents and carers aren't phoning in to let you know that their child is absent in that session, you really do need to be following that up. That means being quite persistent, talking to the families, finding out what's going on, because it could be quite a critical part of the safeguarding puzzle. So the kind of questions that should be running through your head when you're thinking about poor attendance or unexplained absence are really, basically, where is that child? Where are those children when they're not in your setting? Are they safe? But also, on a more practical level, are there some barriers that are actually getting in the way of attendance? And is there something with a little bit of early support that you can offer to that family to help them to get better attendance habits? There may be other people that you need to talk to get some more background information, share your concerns with. So the kind of people that you might be wanting to talk to in this situation might be a health visitor. If the child or children have got siblings in other schools and you know where they go to, you could contact the safeguarding lead in those schools to find out whether they've got concerns about attendance, maybe whether there are other safeguarding issues that are lurking in the background. Again, it's another piece of the safeguarding puzzle. Or, you can always do a no-names consultation with the locality support service team.
Yeah, thanks for seeing me. I just wanted to talk through really because it felt that it was quite a change from how Mum presented last time. Today she was just really, really tearful in a way that I hadn't seen before. And her daughter was at home. It's a school day at the moment, and she was still in her pyjamas, and it was about 2:30 when I visited. And normally, and this is what struck me really, was normally she'd make me a cup of tea and we'd kind of just have a conversation about how the day had gone. But the house felt kind of sealed up, the doors were closed, and it hasn't sat comfortably with me all afternoon.
Yeah, that sounds like a really worrying visit for you, actually, very different to the ones that you've described previously.
Jeanette, her 6-year-old, was sort of at her feet, and normally Jeanette is kind of up and about and going in my bag, and we have more of a dialogue, and it just felt different. And I guess I was thinking, actually I haven't actually met Dad yet. And she talks about him, but I've got no sense of how supportive he is at the moment and if he's involved. In fact, not sure that he is actually Jeanette's biological father as well. I guess I was wondering, has there been an incident really? Because I noticed Jeanette's silence.
Have you had any thoughts around how you might approach that type of conversation with Mum when you go and visit again, in terms of your concerns and your observations?
I suppose I would want to say, you know, I saw how upset you were, and I think for me it's just saying, I noticed that, and it's important to kind of get a wider understanding. And I also thought, actually, to just name that the house felt different, you know, because I think that's also just being transparent. And, you know, I was thinking as well as I don't know the school contact for Jeanette, and actually, don't you normally visit on at 2:30, so I don't know if that's common that she's at home or not. So it's just sort of thinking, actually, am I not at reducing visits? Do I just need to get a bit more sense of what it feels like to be in that house?
I completely agree. It definitely sounds like another visit would be really beneficial, and it would be helpful to find out whether Mum does have any other professionals within her network that may be able to offer support, advice and guidance. So perhaps another kind of thought process around when you visit is perhaps you offering to give school a quick call and find out whether there's somebody like a homeschool link worker that might be able to support. How does that feel?
Okay.